Before you learn how to speak like power, you must unlearn how you quietly destroy it. Most men don't lose authority loudly, they leak it in the small moments, the throwaway phrases, the nervous laughter, the soft disclaimers that crawl out before their truth is allowed to breathe. And you have done this more times than you remember. Every time you say, "This might sound stupid," you have already placed your own wisdom on trial, handed the jury a knife and pointed it toward your throat. Because the room does not measure your worth by what you think, it measures it by what you dare to stand behind. And when you pre-apologize for your words, you teach them to look down at your sphere of influence and see cracks before you even arrive. Machiavelli once said that men judge more with their eyes than with their hands, and that is the trap, because they don't hear hesitation, they see it forming in your posture, your breath, your hesitation, and once they see it, they treat you like a man who should be guided instead of followed. And the first habit that rots your spine is not violence or arrogance, it is softness disguised as humility, the way you soften your entrance so no one feels threatened, the way you coat your thoughts in cushions as if truth needs pillows to survive. But power does not whisper its arrival, and confidence does not clear its throat before speaking, it simply enters the air and occupies it. And when you dilute your opening, your message arrives limping, wounded, already begging for permission. And men who command rooms never ask to be allowed to exist, they take space the way fire takes oxygen, naturally, dangerously, without apology. Stop narrating your fear, stop announcing your weakness, stop handing the blade to strangers, because only a foolish king invites the assassin and points to his own heart, and you have done this by habit, not by intention, and that is what makes it deadly. The second habit looks harmless on the surface, but it empties your authority in silence, and that is overqualifying praise, that strange ritual where you say, not to be weird but, or, you probably hear this all the time before you give someone a compliment, as if sincerity is something illegal, as if admiration is contraband, and you wrap it in disclaimers because you have been trained by a weak world to believe honesty makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability makes you prey. But Machiavelli warned that a prince must never appear uncertain of his gifts, and when you sugarcoat truth, you poison it because you teach the listener that your words are dangerous, strange, awkward, or inappropriate, and suddenly your sincerity feels like a burden instead of a gift. A confident man does not apologize for clarity, he does not fear being seen as direct, he fears only being false. And when you pollute your praise with fear language, it becomes manipulation, watered, uncomfortable, hollow. Praise without courage is not kindness, it is cowardice in costume, and you feel it in your chest every time you do it. That small sting of self-betrayal that you pretend not to notice. The third knife you place at your own back is self-mockery, that cheap armor of jokes, that preemptive humiliation you throw at yourself before the world can take a turn. You make jokes about your body, your mind, your failures, your awkwardness, because if you laugh first, you think you control the blade. But Machiavelli wrote that men forget injuries sooner than insults to their honor. And when you insult yourself, you don't create safety, you create instruction. You show the world exactly how to treat you, you train them by example, you place your crown on the floor and invite them to kick it, and they don't even hate you for it, they simply follow the script you handed them, because what you make small, others make worthless. A king does not joke about his crown, even if it is dented, he cleans it, wears it, and lets the world wonder how it was damaged, because mystery preserves authority and laughter destroys it. And these three patterns, announcing fear, apologizing for sincerity, and weaponizing yourself against yourself, are not separate wounds, they are different faces of the same fear, the fear of being seen without armor, not admired, not hated, but seen in raw form. And so you try to control perception instead of building presence, you try to soften the blow of your existence before it can land, and in doing so, you erase the impact you were supposed to have, because confidence is not skin deep. It is not posture or voice, it is the refusal to fragment yourself in front of witnesses, it is the ability to sit fully inside your words without apologizing for the space they take. And most men will never achieve this because the reward for weakness is immediate comfort, light laughter, shallow approval, a room that feels warm but never respects you. But the cost is eternal, you become a man who is liked and forgotten, welcomed and ignored, tolerated and discarded, and you will feel it in quiet. Moments not as pain but as hollowness, like living in a house you were never meant to own. If you want to reverse this decay, you must become ruthless toward your own habits, listen to your words like a predator, hear every apology before truth, every joke before pain, every disclaimer before power, and cut them out without mercy, because clarity is not soft, presence is not kind, power is not forgiving, but neither is regret. And you must choose which pain you want to carry, the pain of being exposed, or the pain of never arriving. The confident man does not script his image, he survives the rawness of being real, he stands in silence without performance, he lets people see him without filters. And that silence, that nakedness, that lack of defense is what creates gravity, because in a world addicted to noise, the man who does not beg to be understood becomes the center of the room without trying. And when you stop performing, something strange happens. People don't lean away, they lean toward, because they sense a man who is not selling, not shaping, not adjusting, but existing, and existence without apology is rare, dangerous, magnetic, and right now you are closer to that man than you realize. Because the discomfort you feel while hearing these words is not fear, it is recognition, it is the last part of you waking up and realizing how much you have been giving away for free, and that part of you is hungry, and hunger is good. Hunger means you are no longer satisfied with being small, but understanding the wound is not enough, because the rot goes deeper, and we are only beginning to uncover how you sabotage yourself when no one is watching, and in the next part you will see how your apologies, your smiling, your speed, your interruptions, your false peace quietly destroy the version of you that could have commanded every room you ever walked into. And if this feels uncomfortable, stay with it, because comfort is where weak men sleep and power is born where the air gets thin. The corruption of your presence doesn't stop at what you say before speaking, it continues in what you do when you think you are being polite, because politeness, when driven by fear, is the most socially accepted form of self-betrayal. And the next habit that drains you quietly is apologizing when you have done nothing wrong, that reflexive, sorry, that spills out of your mouth when you bump a chair, when you interrupt a silence, when you take up oxygen in a room, and every time you do it, you make a withdrawal from the invisible account of your authority. You tell the world and your own nervous system that your existence is a disruption, that you are excess, that you should shrink. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should never make himself contemptible, and yet this is how men become contemptible to themselves, not by vice, but by softness without spine, because apology has power only when it is rare and deserved, and when you scatter it everywhere like dust, it loses meaning and you lose height. Your back bends a little more each time until your posture matches your permission-seeking soul, and then comes the next quiet execution of your confidence, how you respond to interruptions, because interruptions are not rude accidents, they are tests of territory, and when someone cuts you off and you shrink, smile, retreat, or abandon your own thought, you broadcast a message more clearly than words ever could. I do not value my voice enough to defend it, and men do not stop interrupting you because they respect you, they stop because you teach them through calm, silent persistence that your sentences are not disposable, that when you pause and return to your thought without aggression, without apology, without performance, you create tension in the room, and tension is the birthplace of authority. You do not need volume, you do not need anger, you only need stillness that says, I am not finished. And the room will feel it like pressure in the air, because calm dominance is louder than noise, and after that comes the most socially rewarded weakness of all, performing agreement to avoid tension, that false nod, that fake laugh, that empty, yeah, I get it, when your soul does not agree and you think this makes you likable, you think it makes you easy, smooth, adaptable, but Machiavelli warned that a man who tries to avoid enemies entirely will create only contempt, because a man who stands for nothing becomes invisible to everyone, and when you nod through what offends your core, you flatten your identity, you erase your outline, you become a ghost sitting in a chair pretending to be alive. Disagreement is not war, it is not disrespect, it is the architecture of boundaries, and boundaries are the bones of presence. Without them you are soft tissue, shapeless, forgettable. And then comes the smile, the most abused muscle in the weak man's body, the nervous smile, the tension smile, the wounded smile, the misunderstood smile. When your smile becomes a reflex instead of a truth, it is no longer warmth, it is submission, and a man who smiles through pain is not seen as kind, he is seen as harmless, safe, easy to ignore, and you must understand that your face is a weapon, and when you dull it by constant use, it loses authority. Your expression should be honest, not pleasant, real, not rehearsed, neutral when the moment calls for stillness, because even silence can dominate when it is sincere. And then there is your voice, the speed of it, the way you rush through words as if chased, as if hunted by silence, as if the space between sentences might expose something fragile inside you, and rapid speech is the body confessing that it does not believe it deserves time, that it must empty its thoughts before the room changes its mind. But power is never rushed. A man who commands attention moves slower, speaks cleaner, breathes deeper, because each pause is psychological territory, each gap between sentences forces the world to lean in instead of drift away. Machiavelli said that he who controls fear controls men, and when you control your own fear of silence, you control the emotional weather of every room. And finally, the most invisible betrayal of all, narrating your inner collapse out loud, saying, "This probably sounds stupid, I'm rambling, sorry I lost my train of thought," because in doing this, you tear your own structure down in real time. You step out of your presence and announce to the room that they should not take you seriously, and this is not humility, this is spiritual self-harm. Confidence is not perfect speech, it is the refusal to abandon yourself mid-sentence. Even when your words stumble, even when your thoughts stretch thin, you stand inside them without apology. And the tragedy of all these habits is not that they make you polite, it's that they make you disappear. You become a man who is liked but never followed, heard but never remembered, tolerated but never trusted. And the world does not trust fragmented men, it trusts men whose words, breath, silence, and spine all tell the same story. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke of appearance as power, because unity of being creates gravity, and gravity creates orbit. And when you stop apologizing for existing, stop surrendering to interruption, stop faking agreement to survive, stop smiling to survive tension, stop rushing to be accepted, and stop narrating your own collapse, something violent and beautiful happens. You begin to feel like yourself again, not the version shaped by fear, not the mask trained by social survival, but the original presence you buried long ago to stay safe. And that version of you is dangerous not because he is cruel but because he is coherent, and coherence is rare, unpredictable, unforgettable, and you will feel exposed when you begin to walk without these shields, like walking into cold air without a coat. But that cold is not your enemy, it is the environment where strong men are born, because confidence is not built in warmth, it is forged in discomfort, in silence, in stillness. In the seconds where you do not perform, do not smile, do not soften, do not apologize, you simply stand, and allow the world to adjust to you instead of adjusting yourself to the world. And some people will not like it, some will say you've changed, some will feel threatened, some will walk away, and that is not a loss, that is a filtration, because Machiavelli understood that respect is never built by those trying to please everyone, it is built by those who are willing to be feared by some and misunderstood by many. And as you advance into this version of yourself, rooms will feel different, conversations will change, silence will stretch longer after you speak, not because you asked for it, but because your words carry weight instead of need. And once that happens, you will never want to return to the old version of yourself, the one who smiled too much, spoke too fast, apologized for air, and disappeared in the name of peace. And now you stand at the edge of something most men never touch, the threshold of coherent power, the line between approval and presence, between safety and truth, and the choice is brutal and beautiful. Stay small and be loved, or stand tall and be real, because you cannot have both. And if you feel something moving in your chest right now, that is not motivation, that is memory, the part of you that remembers what you were supposed to become before the world trained you to shrink. And do not ignore it, because once seen it cannot be unseen. And if you think this was heavy, if you think this cut deep, understand this was only the surface, because the next lesson does not soften its blade, it does not offer comfort, it does not protect your ego, it goes straight for the last illusions you still cling to. And if you are not ready to face that, you should leave now, but if you are, then stay close, because what comes next will not feel like advice. It will feel like a mirror held to your darkest discipline.